Peter Welch of Vermont. He's on the Judiciary Committee and questioned Bove today. Welcome.
You sure did question Bove, Senator. Let's play. I was just stunned. I'm like, we are still talking about this, but here it is.
Who won the 2020 election for President of the United States?
President Biden was certified as the winner of that election.
So you give the standard answer. You can't say that he won because he got the majority of votes and also got the Electoral College victory?
I think the characterizations that you just made, Senator, are both political, and so I can't address them under the canons, and they're also tied up in ongoing litigation.
Help me understand how it's political to state who got the most votes in any election.
Senator, I'm just trying to be precise.
Emil Bove has been nominated for a New Jersey-based seat on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit. Did you think, was his appearance sufficient enough to earn your support today?
No, he ended by saying he was being precise. I think he was being evasive, is the better word. Essentially, Bove has his individual challenges. He's got a real temperament issue that's been documented throughout his career by people who've worked on the other side of cases with him, by his fellow attorneys. And even there was action taken about the possible demotion for him. And it's all around temperament. But he also, as you saw, was very evasive on the basic question of who won the election. And all of the Trump folks have taken the talking point that Biden is the president. But the real issue here with him, with Todd Blanche, and with the Attorney General Bondi, all of whom are very close and have been in the trenches with Trump, is that President Trump has largely succeeded in making the Justice Department his personal law firm. That's, I think, the heart of what is very alarming to me. And I don't want Bove to go from where he is to an appellate court judge.
And that sentiment was echoed today by Senator Blumenthal. Here's what he had to say about the appearance of a quid pro quo.
But the quid pro quo that really concerns me is the one that brings you here today. You were virtually the only attorney in the Department of Justice willing to go to court and make a claim that career prosecutors said violated their basic standard of ethics. And the quid pro quo was a nomination to the Court of Appeals. That's the appearance that the American people can take away.
Do you share that concern, Senator?
Well, I do. I think that he's demonstrated, along with the others, that his client is Donald Trump. And if you're in the Justice Department, your client is the Constitution and the people in this country. And obviously there's a tension there. But the bottom line is he's been a very, very loyal supporter to do whatever it is the president wants. And he is being rewarded. He already was with the Justice Department appointment.
So I got a couple of places I want to go here because this guy's a joke. I'm sorry. Bove is a joke. It's an unserious selection to a very important appeals court, and I wish people would stop pretending that somehow that this is their serious matter. Donald Trump is punking the judicial system. He's punking the Senate. He's put up incompetent individual after individual. So here's my question. Did anyone bother to ask this individual, okay, if you did say, let's pretend, Mr. Bove, that you didn't say that, but someone else did. Would you, as a sitting member of the appeals court, what would you say if someone said to you, F the courts?
Well,
what would be your view on that, sir?
Michael, we needed you on the Judiciary Committee today because that actually is a really
That's a good question.
Well, what you're getting at is you can ask a direct question, as Adam Schiff did, as I did. And I think you're entitled to the expectation of a candid answer. They've got their scripted remarks that are all elusive. So if we take it out one step later, I'm not talking about you. I say to the witness, just hypothetically.
Hypothetically.
Yeah. And would they admit that? They might figure out that it's a back door.
Well, no, but then he'd say, well, Senator, I don't want to answer hypotheticals.
Well,
Well, today, the first judicial hearing of President Trump's second administration is also getting fiery. This was the back and forth between Democratic Senator Adam Schiff and President Trump's former criminal defense attorney, who's now up for a federal judicial nomination.
In the complaint, it says Beauvais stated that DOJ would need to consider telling the courts "F you" and ignoring any such court order. Did you say anything of that kind in the meeting?
Senator, I have no recollection of saying anything of that kind. To the extent I
Wouldn't you recall, Mr. Beauvais, if you said or suggested during a meeting with Justice Department lawyers that maybe they should consider telling the court "F you"? It seems to me that would be something you'd remember, unless that's the kind of thing you say frequently.
Well, I've certainly said things encouraging litigators at the department to fight hard for valid positions that we have to take.
NBC's Melanie Zanona has the latest on Capitol Hill for us. Also with me, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General and former U.S. Attorney Harry Litman. Good to have you both here. Harry, the idea of attorney-client privilege has come up a lot during this hearing. Let me play that.
Did you ever talk to Stephen Miller before you filed the memorandum on February 10th ordering the dismissal of the Adams charges?
Senator, I responded to Senator Kennedy's questions based on a publicly filed document that described the Attorney General as a...
Did you talk to Stephen Miller?
I'm not going to describe the participants in conversations.
So you won't answer that question?
No, I will not, Senator.
Why?
Because it is not appropriate for me to discuss...
It is appropriate for you to tell us whom you consulted before taking action on behalf of the United States of America. I am absolutely flabbergasted that you would come before this committee and refuse to tell us basic facts.
Does he have an argument, Harry, involving attorney-client privilege?
Not in front of a Senate confirmation hearing. You could say there's an argument, but there's an argument the Senate needn't confirm him. Look, Beauvais is doing a combination of claiming privilege, saying there's ongoing litigation, saying I don't recall, as you just heard him say to Senator Schiff, and generally just denying. There's always a sort of upfront strategic choice in these things. Do you defend or attack? They have decided, as have the Republicans, to attack, implicitly acknowledging that if these allegations are accurate, it really should disqualify him from the bench. Their problem, of course, is that there's a lot of corroborating information, starting with, you'll remember, Chris, the entire Mayor Adams situation where there were 7 people who resigned. That was Beauvais, the architect and muscle behind that as well. So it's going to be, I think, hard to say this is all false. And there's one statement in particular. The FU is inflammatory, but he then later said, allegedly, those planes will take off no matter what. If he means that, that has to be, I'm telling you to defy court orders, no two ways about it.
So, Melanie, I don't know if they're on a break or the hearing's over. Update us on that. I know that he's left the chair, but give us the overall sense of what we've heard.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really contentious blockbuster hearing, I would say. And this is the first judicial nomination hearing that we have seen in the second Trump administration. And the stakes were incredibly high here because Beauvais is seen as someone who could be a potential Supreme Court nomination or pick for Trump one day. And his nomination, of course, has come under intense scrutiny for a whole host of reasons, including that really damning whistleblower report, which Beauvais denied. But he's also been in the driver's seat of a number of really controversial decisions and moves inside the DOJ over the past few months since he's been in that role. One of them being his shakeup within the agency, particularly firing a number of prosecutors who worked on the January 6th case. He was pressed about his work and his role and all of that by Democratic Senator Cory Booker. Let's listen to that exchange.
An FBI agent described you as treating the January 6th cases as a priority when you were prosecuting those cases. But then you fired dozens of prosecutors and 8 senior FBI officials working on the case. Is that correct?
No.
So, Mr. Beauvais, I am hoping that more evidence is going to come out that showed that you lied before this committee. And I'm wondering where the lines are for you. So what's your red line? I really wonder, what could the president ask you to do that you wouldn't do? What wouldn't you do to win?
And the bigger point that the senator was trying to make there was whether or not Bovee could be trusted, was fit to serve in this really incredibly important role. And part of the reason is because of these whistleblower reports that suggested that Bovee was suggesting to ignore court orders in order to help Trump's immigration agenda. So some dot connecting there with other controversial moves that Bovee has made inside the DOJ.
Give me a big picture here, Harry, about what this might mean, depending on what happens for future confirmations. This is a lifetime appointment, right?
Yes, but I think it's more than that. It's also, there's a prospective aspect, but in retrospective, because this is the guy who clearly was put in to exercise muscle on behalf of Trump, even if the norms of the department and the law pointed the other direction. So there's also a broader question of sort of rewarding that whole enterprise. In terms of the future, the obvious concern is if he were here willing to put something other than the law in front, some political agenda, notwithstanding having sworn not to do it, that could happen again. But I think there's also the sense of we don't want to reward this whole operation that he has been a big lieutenant of.
What you're seeing here is Donald Trump's latest pick for the judiciary, for the courts, which is made by his cabinet pick, though. I know it's a weird process, but in many ways, the DOJ, his attorney general makes the pick. It's, part of the process, but this is the latest pick from Trump and his cabinet. He actually has been quite slow on judicial nominations, right? One thing Trump and Biden was actually quicker, but one thing Trump did in his first term that made a lot of Republicans happy was that he was very quick to nominate judges, not just for the Supreme Court, but for all the lower courts as well. And that helped stack the deck in favor of right-wing policy over the next decade. And Biden also appointed a lot of judges. And so the feeling was, well, the next president, whether Trump or Harris, was going to do the same. But Trump's been slow. And maybe we're getting a sense why. Because this is one of his first high-profile judicial nominations for this cycle. And it's a disaster. First of all, right off the bat, I don't want to be, automatic about it, but you probably shouldn't nominate somebody who used to be a lawyer for you. Maybe the person's qualified and maybe this is unfair, but if I was president or prime minister of a country or whatever, and I had a personal lawyer that worked for me and they were a great lawyer, unfair as it is, I don't think I should ever appoint them to the court system or nominate them to the court system, because it's is it quid pro quo? How loyal are they going to be, not just ideologically, but personally to me? There's all of that. But then it comes down to the fact that this is the guy that's implicated broadly in this new scandal, where apparently it's in writing now that the courts are going to ignore, or the Trump's going to ignore the court rulings. He's basically saying that even if Republican courts go against him, even if the Republican Supreme Court goes against him, he's going to disobey court rulings, saying the new rule is F you to the courts when they disagree with us. And so senators have made it clear, at least the Democratic ones, that their votes are against this guy. And Trump judges are going to have a hard time in these hearings.